Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well on this extra spooky day. Yes, today's a very spooky day because it is in fact Halloween, or at least it will be when I post this video. But in the spirit of celebrating Halloween today, I thought it'd be a fun idea to post an extra spooky edition of what I've been watching. Now, many of you guys will know that every few months I like to post these videos just to catch you guys up on what I've been watching. You know, all of the stuff that I've been checking out that I haven't gotten a chance to review on my channel. Now, many of you guys will know I did take a bit of a break a month ago because so much was going on, but I was still checking things out. I was still watching things. And so today we are going to be talking about some of the stuff that I caught during that time, as well as what I've been watching since then. And this is going to be a very movie heavy edition of what I've been watching. There are a few films that I didn't get a chance to do reviews of last month, but I'm really excited to go through them with you guys here in this video. And as per usual, when it comes to these what I've been watching videos especially, I love hearing you guys' recommendations for what you guys have been checking out, whether they be movies or TV shows or special presentations. And so please be sure to share your thoughts down in the comments below, because especially at this time of the year where we're getting to the end, you guys know that I'll be preparing for my best of videos, so any recommendations that you have are more than welcome. And of course, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, without further ado, let's get into what I've been watching, spooky edition. Ooh. Now, just a quick little disclaimer before we get into the video. Many of you guys will know that I am not a horror girly. I am not a horror girly by any stretch of the imagination. Hi, I'm Jean and I'm a scaredy cat. Oh, I'm a scaredy cat, so please do not expect anything too scary, too spooky on this list, okay? I'm just going to be talking about some like cute, somewhat scary films, you know, somewhat on theme films. Like, don't expect me to review Smile, don't expect me like nothing of that sort, okay? So yeah, we're just talking about the cute one. The first one up, for example, is Hocus Pocus 2. Like, that's the energy that we're bringing to that's the energy that we've got. So speaking of Hocus Pocus 2, yes, I finally checked it out. Literally yesterday, I finally checked out the sequel, the long-awaited sequel, I guess, to the first Hocus Pocus, which came out about 25 years ago, I'd say. And this is going to be short and sweet because that's kind of what this film was. It was short and sweet. It was giving very much Disney Channel original movie with a slightly higher budget and an all-star cast. Of course, we have the return of our favorite witchy sisters portrayed by the original actresses Sarah Jessica Parker, Bette Midler and Kathy Najimy. We're so happy to see them back in this sequel. I mean, the sequel couldn't happen without them, honestly. Now, I actually talked about my appreciation of Hocus Pocus a few years back when I did a Halloween video recommending a bunch of movies for Halloween if you're a scaredy cat like I am. That is the cringiest video on the internet, so you don't have to check it out, but take my word for it, I really do like the first Hocus Pocus movie, and I was looking forward to seeing the second one, even though I hadn't heard the highest praises of it. And I would say it was serviceable. Like I said, it's giving Disney Channel original movie vibes and it's decent. As for the story itself, of course it takes place on Halloween, where you have the Sanderson sisters return after the Black Flame is enlightened once more by these three young girls. Actually, it's two of them that light the flame, and they end up chasing the sisters around town as chaos ensues on Halloween nights. Pretty much similar to what we saw in the first Hocus Pocus movie. We have some more modern references now and a very blatant I wouldn't even say product placement, institution placement in the form of Walgreens being featured front and center in like half of this film. It's crazy. I wonder how much they paid for that kind of exposure. You also got the obligatory references and Easter eggs to the original film, as you can expect expect from a sequel like this. There is even a sequence where the sisters get to perform and hypnotize the whole town as they look for the mayor, who is actually a descendant of the priest who like ousted them from the town, from Salem, back in the day, in the flashback that we see at the beginning of the film. So they're all looking for the mayor, and it's again very reminiscent of what we saw in the first movie. It's the kind of thing that you would expect from a film like this, which is, you know, very much relying on the nostalgia factor of the first movie, which has become much beloved, especially over the years. And as for the new cast, I would say that they gave serviceable performances. They were quite decent. You know, I will say that the characters weren't allowed to really shine that much because they existed under the heavy shadow of the Sanderson sisters, right? I mean, you have Bette Midler coming back here as a force of nature. Sarah Jessica Parker as well looks like she hasn't aged a day, and she fit into that role once again just perfectly. So it's a really tough act to kind of follow or to act against, and so the young girls kind of pale in comparison when it comes to the well-roundedness of their characters. They seem very stereotypical young teenage girls, and not much was given to them to really give them shining personalities that would really stand out. But all in all, their friendship was believable, their chemistry was pretty good on screen, and they did do their best to kind of bounce off of the Sanderson sisters as best as they could to give us some really engaging interactions with them. But it is very much a stage for the Sanderson sisters. Like, the characters that surround them are just there to bounce off of them and allow them to shine as the returning stars of this franchise. But overall, when it comes to Hocus Pocus 2, listen, I would say that the only reason why this exists is because Sarah Jessica Parker, Bette Midler and Kathy Najimy agreed to do it. Otherwise, of course, the original is much beloved, and we know Hollywood will find any way possible to squeeze out more money or more engagement out of franchises or projects that were loved previously for the sake of nostalgia. We know Hollywood is on a nostalgia trip at the moment and has been for a while now, so this was bound to happen, but I'm glad that it happened with the original trio on board, because I can't imagine this film being half as successful without them. Okay, so the next movie that we have on the list is Don't Worry Darling. Now, Don't Worry Darling was quite a hot topic a couple of months back, but it had nothing to do with the film itself, but rather the behind the scenes drama that took place, especially around the Venice Film Festival. Now listen, when it comes to my opinions and all of that drama, I just thought it was messy as hell. Like, I just thought it was a bit embarrassing, it was a bit messy, and obviously it took a lot of attention away from the film itself. You know, we were supposed to be focused on the film and its message and Olivia Wilde's accomplishments as a female director, but instead the film was just overshadowed by all of this messiness and drama and pettiness, and it didn't benefit the film, you know, in a positive way. It in fact made it look a bit, you know, unpolished and unsophisticated as a result. It felt like a project that was done by a reality star instead of a serious actress who has become a serious director. So yeah, the drama surrounding Don't Worry Darling definitely wasn't a good look, but the whole thing was made even worse when critics' reviews came out and they were less than favourable. Oh my. Oh my. Here's the thing, this film could have survived even with all of that drama and controversy if the critics' reviews were good. If the film was perceived as being a success critically, okay, just artistically speaking, then the drama would have helped the film and given it the exposure that it needed to really stand out, especially in this landscape where it's tough for a film of a mid-budget to stand out in that way. So it would have actually been a benefit, a boon to the film. But because it was accompanied by that filthy Rotten Tomatoes score, it did not serve as a benefit. All people kept thinking was, you mean to tell me that you had all this drama, all this controversy, the lies, the embarrassment, the humiliation, and you made a mid-film? Like, that's the worst. Because it just feels like it wasn't even worth it in the end. It's the worst outcome. So yeah, That wasn't great, but I decided to check it out nonetheless because I actually thought I'd have time to review it, even though I did not in the end. But I'm here today to share my thoughts, and here's the thing. I personally think that the critics were being too harsh. I personally think that the critics were jumping on a bandwagon, a hate bandwagon, if you will, and they were having a riot giving this film terrible reviews. But in reality, I don't think it deserved those horrible reviews, but I will still say that the film was nothing to write home about. Here's the thing, I think that Olivia Wilde did a great job aesthetically with this film. She really put her directorial fingerprint on this movie. It looks very stylish. You can see that she's really thought about how she wants to build this world and create this kind of 1950s aesthetic, and all the while there's this like undercurrent of something shifty, something murky going on beneath the surface of this like very beautiful aesthetic and perfect environment. So I think she did a great job with that, especially considering that she had a budget of what, like 30-40 million. Like, she did not have a huge budget at all, and that's amazing considering that this film looks even more beautiful than a lot of blockbusters do these days, and they have budgets of 200+ million. And also a huge plus for this film was certainly Miss Florence Pugh. Miss Florence Pugh was doing the actoring, okay, which is why it's extra peak that Olivia did not have her back, that Olivia was not supporting her. Like, I just think that's so shambolic. Of all of the scandals surrounding this film, I think the part where Olivia was so disdainful towards Florence is the worst part, because to me it goes against the message that Olivia Wilde is trying to say as a woman working in Hollywood. The fact that she did not have her lead actresses back and was even talking mess behind her back in order to get Shia LaBeouf, of all people, Shia LaBeouf on board with her project. I just think that was so shambolic and embarrassing, and it's extra humiliating because Florence ended up being the best part of this film, period. So like, what are you saying, sis? Florence absolutely delivered with her performance in this film. She created a very compelling character who you felt for. You know, she very much conveyed that feeling of being trapped but not knowing why, and really just trying to figure out what was going on with these oddities and these aspects of this seemingly perfect life just being off. These little things that were just bothering her until it builds and builds and she can't take it anymore, and she's trying to free her fellow neighbors and friends, but they're just not listening and they're not believing her. And then you contrast her character against Chris Pine's, who was also excellent in this film, by the way. So again, the drama, just like the plot thickens, okay, when it comes to the behind the scenes drama. But Chris Pine, who was great, you know, he is more than comfortable in this environment. You can see that he is in his element. Why? Because he's the architect. So I felt like those two characters kind of butting heads was a highlight of this film, and I really enjoyed their interactions, especially because Chris Pine's character knew that she knew the truth. I liked that. I liked the fact that there was a character in this, you know, dystopian world who knew that she was trying to get out. He was kind of just prodding her, trying to get her to do something about it, but he was so secure in the knowledge that she would be helpless and that she wouldn't be able to change anything that he didn't see her as posing a real threat. But in the end, she was able to prove herself, and I felt that that was quite satisfying. So yeah, there were definitely parts of Don't Worry Darling that I enjoyed and appreciated, but for the most part, I'm so sorry, I really struggled with this movie. I really struggled with this movie for several reasons. First of all, Don't Worry Darling was clearly trying to be a feminist version of Get Out. You know, Don't Worry Darling was trying to do for feminism what Get Out did for racism, or at least discussions of racism, right? Now, I know that a lot of people have compared this film to other films like The Stepford Wives and whatnot, but I feel the fact that Olivia Wilde made this today in 2022 shows that she's trying to kind of build off of what Jordan Peele has done within the horror genre, of injecting some of that social commentary in there in order to tell a message, you know, to tell the audience a message about something that's important to the creator. And in the case of Olivia Wilde, it's feminism. We know it ain't racism because there were no POCs in this. I'm taking we don't just account about racism, whatever. Anyway, the one black woman in this film is like treated so poorly, and she's the first to die, and it follows along this trope of black people dying in horror films, and it's just whatever. But we're not talking about that right now. Back to feminism, okay? So I understood what Olivia was trying to do with this feminist angle, but I don't think it worked because it was so fundamentally flawed. My first problem was the fact that almost immediately the film makes it clear that something is off with the world that Florence Pugh's character is living in. It doesn't take its time to slowly unravel the mystery. Instead, almost immediately when we're thrust into this world, we are told, it's projected to us that something is wrong. And I felt like it would have been better if Olivia had just taken her time to, you know, slowly unravel this mystery so that Florence's character could discover, hang on, something is off here, right? Because it's just so blatant from the beginning. So instead of us as an audience kind of being settled into this world and into this way of life, we're immediately told that something is wrong, and then we're just waiting for 2 hours to see how the character will, you know, figure it out, or how she will end up getting out of that situation. And that's sort of very fun wait, you know. Once you already know what the answer to the mystery is, you're just left there kind of looking at your watch thinking, okay, well, when is she going to get out of this then? And speaking of the mystery, part of the mystery is that Florence's character keeps having these like visions and dreams about these ballet dancers and, you know, all sorts of visualizations, which end up being a part of the hypnosis that puts her under so that she can partake in this simulated reality. Even though this is a very common trope in the horror genre, even, you know, myself, as someone who doesn't watch a lot of horror films, I'm aware of that at least, okay? But the problem here was that the images didn't really seem very related to the situation at hand. I mean, seeing these ballet dancers was cool, and it created this really cool kaleidoscopic effect, but what did it have to do with Florence Pugh's character? Like, yes, maybe she was a dancer or she partook in dancing lessons in the world, but like, we could have really dug in deeper to really give us visualizations that were directly connected to the character. Like, maybe she had visions of being a doctor, you know, seeing patients, something that was actually related, as opposed to something that looked cool and visually stimulating that had nothing to do with the story, really. And that's one of the differences between a film like Don't Worry Darling and Get Out. Don't Worry Darling seems very focused on the aesthetic, and whilst Olivia Wilde achieved a really interesting and visually appealing aesthetic, she also needed to balance it out with some substance in her story. Whereas Get Out, you know, every single element of that film is very well thought out and it's very thematically relevant. Like, for instance, the sunken place scene that takes place in the film. The reason why the sunken place has become such a part of the pop culture lexicon isn't just because it was a cool scene in the movie, but it's because it's like a feeling, a sentiment that millions of people could relate to, you know, in the audience, especially black people. So that's why it's become adopted as part of our vocabulary. Whereas here, nothing that was used in these visions as a visual cue in the film feels directly connected to the feminist struggle. Another issue with the feminist messaging was the unfortunate tone-deaf nature of the questionable sex scenes. I think this was a huge oversight on Olivia's part, because she really did not realize the monster that she created when it came to those sex scenes. That was such an issue, because here's the thing, Olivia made a big deal about Don't Worry Darling having these sex scenes that were focused on pleasuring women, right? Like, instead of it being male gazy, we focus on the female pleasure, and that's her way of, you know, contributing to the feminist movement of sexual liberation in women and all of that. And that's all well and good, you know, we're all here for female pleasure and whatnot, but here's the thing, this is sexual assault. What? Listen, we find out that Florence Pugh's character is there involuntarily, which means all of those sex scenes that we saw and we were so happy about because it's female empowerment, that was sexual assault. That was sexual, that was, oh no, Liv. Olivia, you did not do what you thought you did, okay, sis? Like, oh, there was no consent there because sis did not want to be there in the first place. it's not giving what you think it gave. Oh no. Well, the reason why I bring this up because it actually reminds me of an article, an insider that I read, which highlighted the issue with a lot of the kind of socio-political commentary that we see in Hollywood, and the fact that a lot of these creators and writers just simply have not done the reading. People working in Hollywood for the most part aren't philosophers themselves, you know, they're not political activists themselves, and it seems like they haven't read from such people either, so they're making glaring mistakes like this left, right and centre, and I think it weakens the message, and it's quite unfortunate because now you have someone like Olivia Wilde being like, this is peak feminism, but in reality she's created a situation where you have a female character who is pleasured by her husband, but she is there involuntarily to begin with, so she could not have consented to any of those sexual interactions. There's literally nothing empowering about it. There's literally no it's problematic, not empowering, sis. And also, as a side note, society has progressed past the need for sexual empowerment to completely encompass feminism. Society has progressed past the need for feminism to be defined by female sexual empowerment, okay? There are many other aspects of feminism that also need to be focused on. This is one little bullet point in the feminist struggle, so we need to start focusing on the other stuff, because clearly we got that message wrong. Clearly a lot of people did not understand that part anyway, so just continue doing the reading, everyone, and hopefully we will get further in the feminist struggle than we have done so far, because it looks like right now we're just going back. We're just going backwards, guys. And my last issue when it came to Don't Worry Darling, at least for the sake of this very short review, was the ending. Oh, I thought the ending was awful. It was really bad. And also a lot of the questions that are kind of raised throughout the film get abandoned for the sake of just wrapping this up in the end. Also, you have that added plot point of Chris Pine's wife, portrayed by Gemma Chang, who ends up shooting him, and then she's like, fine, I'll do it myself. But then nothing ever comes of that. Like, I didn't understand. Does that mean she's taking over his company and she is going to subject women to this form of torture? Like, what's going on here? I really did not understand what the point of that scene was. And overall, the ending to me was just very murky and unsatisfying. And also, if you did want to hear my thoughts on Harry Styles' acting, listen, I thought he was okay. I thought he was okay when he was portraying like the perfect husband, the perfect 1950s man in the kind of simulation. But then for some reason they decided to step out of the simulation, show the real guy who was, you know, poor old haggard Harry Styles, who had like acne and, you know, no makeup on and whatever. You know what else real world Harry Styles also had? He had an American accent. Or at least an approximation of an American accent, or at least a bad approximation of an American accent. Guys, oh, that accent was questionable to say the least. Oh, it was really bad. And also, it didn't make sense because in the film, he has a British accent, but not like a received pronunciation accent, kind of like mine. Mine is pretty received pronunciation. But his was like a northerner accent because he's from up in like Manchester area, so his accent is different. So in my mind, I'm like, how does it make sense that an American man would create this persona for himself in this simulation and give himself not only a British accent, but one that is not received pronunciation, like one that isn't the stereotypical British accent? That's really bizarre. It would be like me creating a persona for myself in a simulation and having an American accent, but instead of choosing the typical kind of American accent, I'm going for a like Boston accent, or like or an accent from like, I don't know, Arkansas. Like it's just really random and it doesn't make any sense just narratively. Okay, so the next movie up isn't technically a traditional movie, but rather a special presentation. Yes, it is in fact Marvel's Werewolf by Night, which was directed by Michael Giacchino in his directorial debut. Loads of you guys all know about Michael Giacchino for his work as a musical composer, but here he's giving directing a go, and I have to say, for the most part, this was a very successful debut indeed. I really enjoyed Werewolf by Night. I thought it was a nice little snack, a nice little Halloween snack. I might in fact rewatch it for Halloween Day because I did enjoy it so much. Now, this is a very different style of Marvel project. It's not quite a feature film and it's not quite a Disney Plus show. It was in fact just under an hour long, or exactly 1 hour, and you know, like they said, it's a special presentation, a kind of short story, and this presentation was particularly special because it introduced us to Marvel's first ever werewolf, Werewolf by Night, who's portrayed by Gael Garcia Bernal. I really enjoyed that aspect of the movie, the fact that we do get to be introduced formally to the kind of monsters side of Marvel. I always love seeing different corners of the MCU, and I think the more diverse and different and interesting they are, the better, in order to allow the franchise to survive and thrive. And here is just another example of another direction that the MCU could go down to attract, you know, different fans, because they did a really great job of realizing these monsters and werewolves and kind of bringing them into the franchise. So as for the setup of this film, here we're introduced to a bunch of monster hunters who have gathered round upon the death of Ulysses Bloodstone, who I'm guessing was a very rich, powerful monster hunter, and he was in possession of the Bloodstone, the very bright red Bloodstone in an otherwise black and white world. Here we see Ulysses' widow hosting this gathering or meeting where everyone is there in order to determine who will next possess the Bloodstone. And in the Bloodstone mansion, you can actually see a bunch of Ulysses' trophies, you know, previous monsters that he has destroyed or taken down using this very powerful Bloodstone, which can weaken monsters or manipulate them in all kinds of ways. And so chaos ensues. You know, the hunt begins. They're all let out into the Bloodstone Manor gardens, where they have to defeat the monster who carries the Bloodstone. And that also, of course, includes Jack Russell, our our protagonist, who is dun 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 also a werewolf. Which, by the way, Jack Russell, I just clocked, Jack Russell is his name. That's so funny. Of course he's a werewolf. But this little movie introduced us to some key players in the MCU monsterverse. I mean, we have Werewolf by Night, who is this like vicious man-wolf hybrid. I really like how they seem to use kind of physical prosthetics to realize the character. And I also like the fact that he seems to remember people's smell once he transforms. So that was the only thing that prevented him from killing Elsa, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I really enjoyed the portrayal of this monster. It feels like nothing that we've seen before in the MCU. And overall, like I said, it makes me really excited to see what else is in store, especially for this little pocket of the universe. And I also really enjoyed the character of Jack Russell. Oh, Jack Russell as portrayed by Gael. I thought he knocked it out of the park, truly. He was so likable. So likable. I want him to be on a team with Moon Knight. And what's that team called? I can't remember, but I'll put it here. It's like Blood Brothers or something. But apparently in the comics, they're all a team with Moon Knight and Doctor Strange. The kind of mystical, you know, monsters verse in the comics. I want that to happen in live action immediately, because I think they would be great together as a team. Daredevil, put Daredevil in there as well. I think that's also part of the team in the comics. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to see what they do with this character. Hopefully they don't forget about him, because they've struck gold here. We also get the introduction of Elsa Bloodstone, who's also a big part of this pocket of the world in the comics. I really liked what Laura Donnelly did with the character. Like I said, I really enjoyed her interactions with Jack Russell. I like the fact that, you know, he was able to recognize her after he had turned into a werewolf, and she was just kind of fighting for her life in that cage. Fighting for her life in that cage. And listen, apparently in the comics, Elsa Bloodstone is this like badass Lara Croft character, but I feel like her portrayal in this special was more humanizing. It was more realistic and grounded, and I really liked that. I liked it also when she went off to find Ted, Jack's friend, who's also Man-Thing. Again, we'll talk about it in a second. And she was just kind of like trying to talk to him on a human level, you know, because Jack had warned her, like, if you show him the fear that you have, and if you seem like frightened and kind of aggressive towards him, he is going to react. So sis, you just need to calm down and have a chat with him like he's your friend. And it worked. I think she did a really great job selling that. So overall, I'm a fan of Elsa Bloodstone as a character, and like I said, I can't wait to see what they do with this character in the future. And finally, yes, we have Man-Thing, who honestly was realized so well. I thought Man-Thing visually was the best thing about this whole special, because that is truly such a great design that they used for the character, and the fact that it was in black and white just enhanced it rather than taking anything away from it. Like, oh, what a striking character design that they have there. I really enjoyed Man-Thing. I like the fact that he had such a mundane name like Ted. No offense to you Teds out there, but yeah, it was such a simple, like unassuming name for a monster of his size and look, and I like the fact that he had that really great companionship with Jack, aka the werewolf. It's clear that Jack has had to get Man-Thing out of similar situations numerous times before. Like, they've been there, they've done that. It's kind of an operation at this point, but things go wrong here, and so Jack is, you know, left spinning out, and he ends up in a very vulnerable position as a werewolf, which was not part of the plan. So yeah, I really like the setup of this film. It was very short, very sweet, but effective, and I now have an MCU project that I can watch every single Halloween until the end of time, so that's also a great positive. And also, as someone who is a scaredy cat, okay, a scaredy cat, I was really happy that this special wasn't particularly frightening. There were moments where I was startled, okay, but I was never like terrified, which I appreciated. So like I said, I'll be watching every Halloween until the end of time. Yep. Happy to do so. The final movie that we're going to be talking about today, guys, is Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam is directed by David O. Russell, somewhat controversially. And I guess that's the first thing that we're going to talk about here, the David Russell of it all. Because David Russell is a very well-known director. He directed films like American Hustle, Joy, Silver Linings Playbook, Babylon. And so he's a very well-respected director creatively. However, he's also very well known for his questionable behavior on set, behind the scenes, on his movie productions. And so that is where the controversy lies. You know, you had Margot Robbie speaking out about things going too far on set. David O. Russell is like one of those traditional directors that come from the old school of Hollywood, where you would have these directors who had a really great reputation, are beloved in the industry and respected, and they, I guess, expected everyone to just deal with any kind of bullshit that they threw their way. Like, they just expected everyone to just bow down to them and take the shit without saying anything back, because they're the geniuses, you know, they're the visionary and artistes, so they get to treat everyone else like shit in order to get the best shot possible. Like, no, that is very much an old school way of thinking, and especially post Me Too, that is not on anymore. And I would say, similarly to the whole situation with Don't Worry Darling, what makes matters worse here is the fact that at the end of the day, this film wasn't even that great. This film wasn't even that great, guys. Amsterdam was like okay, which is shocking, because truly I was really excited to see this movie. I didn't even know it was directed by David O. Russell. I saw the trailer and I saw the amazing cast, and I was like, damn, I really need to see this movie. So when I went to see it, I had really high expectations, and unfortunately it kind of fell flat. Like, the story just wasn't giving what needed to be gave. So speaking of the story, here we have these three main characters portrayed by Margot Robbie, Christian Bale, and John David Washington. Like I said, great cast here. This story follows the lives of these three characters at the beginning of their friendship, you know, when they first became friends during World War I, and they were living this bohemian lifestyle in Amsterdam. We have John David Washington's character Harold still hanging out with Christian Bale's character, but with the former being an attorney and the latter being a doctor, or rather an unlicensed doctor who's working out of like a hole brawl in the streets, or at least he was before John David Washington's character caught up with him. But their lives come to a crashing halt when Taylor Swift shows up, as she does, as she is wont to do, and she brings them a mystery surrounding her father's death, or rather murder. So chaos ensues, and you have the appearance of actors like Timothy Olyphant and Rami Malek and Anya Taylor-Joy and Robert De Niro. Like, the cast here is so strong, as is the case for a lot of David O. Russell films, but unfortunately in this case they are completely wasted because the story just feels so thin and underdeveloped. And it's unfortunate, especially because it tries to tackle some really interesting themes, like some commentary surrounding the contributions of black soldiers in World War I. They were representing America, and yet the way that they were treated when they returned home was abhorrent. It was awful. And these are themes that have been touched upon in previous projects like Lovecraft Country, for instance. But here it's very much front and center of the story here, aside from the mystery, which is kind of whatever. We've seen mysteries like this before. But you also have the rise of, Nazism and the rise of fascism, and how certain elite groups try to infiltrate the government and have this be expedited in order to meet their own interests. That was also a really powerful and timely message that unfortunately was also tackled better in previous projects. In this case, seasons 5 and 6 of Peaky Blinders, which did it so much better. And also, it did not help that Anya Taylor-Joy portrayed a very similar character in this film that she did in Peaky Blinders. And I guess the fact that she was cast in this role spoiled the film for me, because I guessed what would happen based off of the character that she portrayed in Peaky Blinders. But overall, I would say what really held this film together for me was the on-screen chemistry between Christian Bale, Margot Robbie and John David Washington. Those three were thick as thieves, okay, and they were really, really great characters, especially Christian Bale, who's just like such an icon. And to this day, I'm still so pissed that the MCU wasted him. The MCU wasted the character of Gore in Thor Love and Thunder, and I will not forgive them for that, okay? But yeah, this film showed that Christian Bale will do the actoring. He will always do the actoring. Give him a script and he'll deliver, okay? He's never the problem. What the problem was here was definitely the writing. The writing just did not deliver a compelling enough story to really have me engaged from start to finish. But that's it from me. That's it for my what I've been watching spooky edition. But now that I told you guys what I've been watching, it's time for you guys to let me know what you've been checking out and what you would recommend or not recommend down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.